Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Wow.
Good
Your progress since yesterday is impressive. I have a few things that I'll need to talk about before we get into discussion. Just some things that either emerged from last night or housekeeping items generally. So I apologize that it'll take a minute before we get into the nitty-gritty, but I promise it's all important stuff. Let me start with an advisory to the public. My understanding is that we have 6 folks who are signed up to speak today. They will each have 3 minutes, and we'll start public comment by 5:30 to ensure that we are done by 6 o'clock, which is when the open house downstairs will begin. So again, if you are signed up to speak from the public, and that goes, of course, for folks here as well, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll start that at 5:30. I know that a lot of folks who spoke last night spoke with a lot of passion. And I know that some of the way that they communicated might have made some of the committee uncomfortable, and that's okay to feel. I think it's important, given one of the recurring themes across many of the comments having to do with the makeup of the committee, that we just clarify the way that the committee has been assembled and how it will go forward. As you know, not only did the mayor make the appointments of each of you on the basis of your particular perspectives and skills and qualifications, but that was also informed by the work of 4 community advisors. Those are community leaders who elected not to serve on the committee, but have been involved with the Pulse community and wanted to give their support in that way. And they made their decisions with all of the names and emails redacted. So the mayor believes strongly, as I do, that you all were selected very specifically to be part of this work, and that given how long people have been waiting to see this memorial to fruition, that it's important for us to move forward with the committee that has been appointed. And so that is what we will. I also, though, want to make sure that you all know, and that everyone knows, that there is not a single family member, a single survivor, or a single person impacted by the tragedy who will not have the ability to influence the work that we are doing here. And by that, I don't just mean public comment during your meetings. I don't just mean tonight's open house. I don't just mean even coming to other meetings. I mean having direct one-on-one conversations with me and with my colleague Joaquin Guerra, so that we ensure, just as I read from an email sent by family last night, that all of those family members and others have, metaphorically speaking, if you will, seats at this table. I understand that that may not satisfy everybody's needs in this process. I understand that some people may just fervently want to be part of the committee, but I dare say that everything that I've heard from all of you, both prior to the meeting and in our introductions, leads me to believe that each of you wants fervently to do right by all of the families, by all of the survivors, and to channel whatever they tell you into the ultimate recommendations that you make. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that is the step that we're taking on that particular front. I want to let folks on Zoom, it seems like we're getting a nice little spritz here outside. I want to let folks know on Zoom. I know we had some challenges with folks being able to hear interpretation, either English commentary into Spanish or Spanish into English. So I just want to make sure that folks know that on Zoom, on the lower part of the screen that you have, you should see a globe. It looks like a globe, a world icon. And when you click that, you'll see that you can select the language that you want to be hearing. And then you could mute the original audio if you don't want to hear, kind of 2 languages at once. But the main thing is to use the globe to select the language that you feel most comfortable in. And that way, you'll be able to keep up with the commentary going in both English to Spanish or Spanish to English. I hate to keep harping on the microphones because I wish that we could just sit around and chat. But of course, we're in a public meeting and folks are listening remotely. So the advice that I've been told to share is, and we were just joking, Perry and I were joking about how much we kept leaning. But do lean, either lean in or just pull that mic almost to where you're performing at a concert, but it's like as close to you as it can be without getting too close, I suppose. But that is important because I'd hate for any of your comments not to be audible, not just to the folks listening online, but it'll be in a recording that other folks may want to watch, as well as your fellow committee members. I was also asked to suggest or to request that folks speak even a little bit more slowly. I know that that may seem really unnatural, but that's basically a way for the interpreter to digest what you're saying and then render it in the other language so that everybody can keep up. So sometimes just a pause between sentences can do that, but also the rhythm of your speaking. You might pretend you're speaking to someone who I sometimes look at it as like if I'm talking to a younger person or maybe someone who doesn't. Anyway, just however you want to visualize that, that's something I would keep in mind. I do want to again thank the folks who are here for mental health assistance. They're from Aspire Health Partners. Are they in the room? Behind the screen? They stepped out. Okay. They are available for anybody, committee or public, and they are bilingual. So if folks want to be able to engage them in English or Spanish, they will be available to you. I want to just again talk for a moment about the open house. So tonight there is a community open house and it's happening 2 floors down. I think it's the founders room, founders suite. Kathy, if Kathy's in the room, what floor number is it, Kathy? Is it 3 or 2? Second floor. Okay, so second floor founders level for anybody watching and planning to come. For the committee, I want to make sure that you're aware that if you decide to come to the open house, as you heard the attorney speak of last night, don't discuss anything with another committee member because you're not in a public meeting. I know it's a public event, so it can be a little confusing, but it's not a properly noticed public meeting. It's not a meeting that the people can listen to. So you don't want to have a side conversation that then someone thinks, oh, they're making decisions about the memorial and I can't listen to it. So I understand the inconvenience of that. But I would just ask that if you're in the room for the open house, that you try to focus on the community that's there and not each other for that time, so that there's no concern as it relates to the sunshine regulations.
What's the open house for? What is it for?
Yeah, so the open house is really just to give the community a chance to give input on the things that we're talking about here in the committee. So it's just another access point. Some people will want to do that through public comment. Some people will call me directly, but we wanted to give general public a chance. And for those who can't attend in person, there's a virtual option for the open house. So you can go to the website, which is pulseorlando.org/committee. And there you will see in both English and Spanish the same kinds of questions that we're asking physically at the in-person open house. And so that way, if you can't come tonight for any reason, you're still able to give us that input. And it'll go live here just shortly with the questions there. And then you can participate there as you would have if you came physically to be here. A quick note for the media. First of all, thanks to the media for being here today. And then separately, I've been asked to guide you to do all interviews in the hall rather than physically in this room, just to allow for the space to kind of be kept in a little calmer kind of situation. So we know that interviews are important to your work, including with committee members, and we just ask you to do that in the hallway. The same goes for the open house, not to go into the main open house room to do interviews. We understand video is important, but for interviews to take that into the hallway. The last thing for the moment, and I know there's been a lot here, is the schedule for our future meetings. We had developed a schedule and then asked for your input and then made some modifications based on the input that was given to us. So I want to share with you and for the public the dates that we have identified. And from what I remember in a previous meeting, it will probably be here as a default. So folks can plan for these meetings to take place here at the Kia Center unless otherwise noted. And I also think we'll generally be meeting in this 4 to 8 p.m. kind of window to allow folks to minimize disruptions to work, but also have a good chunk of time to get our work done. So we're planning for our next meeting to take place on Wednesday, August 21st and Thursday, August 22nd. So that's Wednesday, August 21st and Thursday, August 22nd. I know that there may be folks who won't be able to make it, and just as we had a committee member not be able to attend even virtually this meeting, I will see to it personally that your input is noted on what we're going to discuss before, after, however we want to do that. But for those who know that they will be physically outside of town but wanting to join or able to join, committee members, as we are doing tonight, will be able to join via a link if they need it. So again, that's Wednesday, August 21st, Thursday, August 22nd, with a projected start and end of 4 to 8 p.m. Local Eastern time. The next meeting after that would be Wednesday, September 25th to Thursday, September 26th. We were trying to accommodate some committee member conflicts with the earlier dates. So again, Wednesday, September 25th and Thursday, September 26th. Following that, October was a little bit of a trickier month to schedule. So we're going to have Monday, October 7th and Tuesday, October 8th. So a little bit of a switch up there. That's the only time that we're not on a Wednesday and Thursday as of now. But Monday, October 7th and Tuesday, October 8th would be those two meeting dates. Then we're going to take a little bit of a pause based on schedules. The election came into our mind. So we're going to look at Wednesday, November 20th and Thursday, November 21st. Wanted to, of course, avoid the week of Thanksgiving, but again, also had some challenges earlier in that month. And then finally, to get a meeting scheduled before the holidays, but still allow us that extra time, Wednesday, December 11th and Thursday, December 12th. So again, Wednesday, December 11th and Thursday, December 12th. So I'll read all of those again for those who are trying to make sure they have it noted. Wednesday, August 21st, Thursday, August 22nd. Wednesday, excuse me, Wednesday, September 25th, Thursday, September 26th. Monday, October 7th and Tuesday, October 8th. Wednesday, November 20th and Thursday, November 21st. And Wednesday, December 11th and Thursday, December 12th. Again, the assumption will be that we will start at 4 p.m. each of those days and that we will end around 8 p.m. That can, of course, change to some extent, and that we'll default to the Kia Center as our main venue. And let me just take a moment to thank the Kia Center. This has, at least for me, been a really wonderful place to convene. And I know the staff here at the facility have done a lot, in addition to all the city staff, to make it possible for us to meet here. So thank you to them as well. Looking to my colleague, did I miss any housekeeping or logistical items that you're aware of? Okay. Oh, I did want to make one other note about notes. Note about notes. Because I, frankly, was confused. And so I wanted to clarify, if you want to take your own personal notes that you can keep, that do not need to be left behind, you may absolutely do that. And I would recommend doing it on the pad as opposed to stickies. And the reason is I'm going to use the stickies a lot for stuff that is going up on the wall. And so each of you should have a pad. If you don't, we'll certainly get you one. But these are personal notes that you will not have to preserve in the same way as public record as you would the sticky notes that you're contributing as an idea. And the only reason you'd have to ever turn these over is if you shared them with another person on the committee, but the assumption is you wouldn't because they're your personal notes. So in short, if you want to take notes during the meeting, take them on the pad and take the pad with you and keep those notes to yourself so as to avoid any conflict with the sunshine law. But since we're only meeting roughly once a month, I think it would be important to be able, if you can, to refer back to the notes. Kelly, go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering if we could take like a picture of the sticky notes on these.
You certainly can take a picture, but it will also be posted publicly. The question, if people didn't hear it, the question was around capturing everything on the Post-it notes, and that is public record. So you certainly may for your own personal use, but it will be posted as the minutes, as the video, as the agenda would be. So that's kind of why I'm trying to separate the pad and the stickies, different papers. So any questions around any of that? I'll just note that we have a couple of committee members again joining us on Zoom. And actually, I may need to have our tech folks just, there it goes. Thank you so much. But I'll have it open here on my screen, and that'll make it a little bit easier for me to notice both committee members and members of the public when they're asking to speak. Particularly for Ms. Jimenez, I'm very sorry that I did not see your hand being raised before, but I commit to you that I will do that. I also will note that committee member Myra Alvear is on Zoom just for the moment. She said she was running late, so she will be here physically, but she's on Zoom with us now, as are committee member Josh Garcia. We also have Stacy Fallon, our attorney from the law department, joining us on Zoom as well. So if we have questions, she is available to us for that. I know that was a lot, sorry. I wanted just before we get back into the discussion to check in. How are you doing? And I'd kind of like to ask each person just briefly to share how you're doing, to check in. I'm not looking for something elongated. It's really just a way to say, you know, how am I right now? Because I think that this is not a conversation like any other conversation that we ever have. And so I think it's important to know how each other is doing rather than assuming we're doing a certain way. So Terrence, I don't know if you'd be willing to share how you're doing, and then I'll move it along. I promise I won't always pick on the gentlemen who are at the end there, but
it's fine. I would say today I am here.
okay.
Well, doing well today.
Thank you, Brett.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Still anxious, but hopeful.
Hopeful.
So far so good.
I'm doing well, thank you.
Emotional, but again, very hopeful for day 2.
Doing well.
Every day I'm blessed.
Agreed.
Still very hopeful. Kind of same thing as yesterday, mix of emotions and present.
Yeah. I hope that everybody recognizes how okay it is to feel any of these things and the ones that we didn't say. You can feel any which way you want. I'm smiling because Stephanie, the clerk, and I have worked out a system where if I don't see Zoom, I see her waving a large Orlando, it's not that large, but an Orlando flag. So thank you for waving the flag. Who was it that wanted to speak? Josh, did you want to share how you're doing?
Just doing good. Thank you.
Oh, good. Myra, did you want to share as well? Like she's on her mobile phone and still muted. I can't hear you yet.
Here we go. Hi, emotional.
Very understandable. Aracelis, would you like to share how you're doing as well?
Buenas todas, buenas tardes. Un poco ansiosa porque tú sabes que son momentos que a uno le reviven mucho todo, mucho nervio y nada, pero dentro de todo, estamos tranquilos.
I really appreciate you sharing that. It's very natural to have that kind of reaction. So thank you. And I know it's not easy to have to join from a distance, and I'm glad you're still here with us tonight. Thank you for being here. It means a lot. Okay. You guys mind if we talk about the memorial? Oh, please. Finally?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yes.
let me turn us back to our PowerPoint presentation. And one of the things that I did want to do, we've, as you can see, landed on where we stopped last night. I was really heartened to see how much it looked as if you all were engaged in listening to the other communities that came on and shared. And I also noted that folks in the public felt it important to say that we are not any other community, and that is absolutely true. But hopefully there were some things that you picked up from hearing those other communities that could be beneficial. And I'll just say, for anybody who wasn't able to hear that panel discussion, it is recorded and we'll be able to listen back if you missed it. But I would just wonder if there's any takeaways that folks wanted to share, something you heard either one city tell you or that you heard cutting across all 4 of the cities that were represented that you thought, that's interesting and that could be very relevant to our work. They're using the placards. I like it.
one
Jamie, then I'll go kind of this way. So Jamie.
Sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure which city it was, but they took artifacts from the victims and placed them into the bench or whatever portion of it, and they did not reveal that to the public. And I think that is very sentimental, and I think that's just very touching.
I
Absolutely.
believe that was San Bernardino that
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
And I had not known that until last night, even though I've talked with Felisa before. So that was a great thing that she shared, especially right after we had spoken about artifacts. So Lolly, and then I'll go over to Norman, and I think then Tommy.
My takeaway is definitely that all of these different memorials kind of share the same as far as the cohesiveness in the group. And I think it's important to illustrate that, yes, we're not like every other city. However, we're all human. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that, and that I think one of the biggest things is the unity, and that it's going to be long. It's going to take a bit, but we will get there and we'll work on it. Back to my message of hope. So
Very welcome.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Lolly. I'll do Norman, then Tommy, then Perry.
Things listening to everyone. One of the things that I gathered was that someone said that it wasn't a graveyard. You know, they wanted to make sure that it wasn't seen as a place where, you know, people were taken from us, rather than a memorial where we're like memorializing and finding serenity. I also took away the amount of time that they said a lot of these things took. So I feel like that's where the people who were speaking in the public, that's where the sentiment came from, where they said that we're not every other tragedy.
Right.
Considering, you know, it's been 8 years that we've been waiting for a memorial or for something to take place, you know, so it's a little scary to listen to other people say like, oh, you know, ours is about to be built, or it's 10 years into the making and things like that. So I feel like that's where those emotions come from. But
Yeah, that's
pretty much my big takeaway was not it being a graveyard and making sure that it was a peaceful place.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I noticed that also as a character. My goodness, you've upset the, I noted that also both in the conversation and in the public comment. And I think that, you know, one thing that's important to contextualize is a community like Las Vegas started and finished their process. It's not as if a process started and then completely ended and now there's a new process. So the fact that they're 7 or so years on is like as if things started, in 2016, as opposed to them starting in 2024. So that was my reflection on that, but I appreciate you surfacing that. Tommy, then Perry.
Jamie and Nora kind of already referenced two things. I do think the mementos should be implemented here. I think it will bring the 49 families. I feel like they'll feel less ignored and more inclusive if we do utilize that. Another thing I noticed with a lot of them was a lot of them had water features because of tranquility and all that. And if you've ever been to the Pulse, one of the main features there inside club and outside club was a waterfall. And that was I think for Pulse's memorial, we do need a water feature fountain of some sort to have that essence as well as tranquility. But another thing I really liked from I think it was Sandy Hook, the one that did the sacred soil.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think that's something else that should also be utilized, because due to the last go of this, and a lot of public perception on this current committee, it seems like it's dragging on something. Like there's been plenty of posts like get over it, whatever. With the sacred soil, I think you in terms of the energy aspect, you're burning away all that negativity from the last time around. And like Norman said before, Pulse is not San Bernardino, Sandy Hook is none of them. We do have a similar reason for them existing. But the one thing that is a negative for us right now is we now have to double back and do the work over again because the last people couldn't do the job. And I think that's where a lot of frustration is coming from. It's like, we already did this. Why are we doing this again? Because it needs to get done.
Absolutely. I hear that sentiment very loudly. So I appreciate you surfacing that. Perry, and then I'll see. Oh, Terrence. So Perry and then Terrence.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of echo the statement. So we talked about kind of like the conserving energy and then how that energy is kind of put back into the space. So of course, like there were things that were, encapsulated. And then the one that I'm missing was the rocks that were painted that they have in a warehouse. So, the kind of the thought process of, like we said, like burning something, putting it into the soil, giving the community something that they've created to add to this space. Seeing like how there was like the mosaics of glass, like how we've kind of come together to give everyone that space, to give like that kind of homage, I think would help. And the same thing with the water, because I remember that water feature, like literally that was the first thing you said. You were talking about walking in and seeing the P when you drove up. And then when you walked inside, you were in this vestibule, that water fountain was kind of like washing us away. And it was the same and when you came in and then when you left in that same kind of capacity. But the last part on it, and again, as we were talking about like timelines, it is hard because we have to think that like we're starting over, and what this comes to is figuring this out, funding, getting approval, getting this built, having this finished. And I think that's what a lot of us are still feeling, that shock is like, we hope that in January, we're going to hand this over and this is going to be like, we've got it. And then we're going to just like hit the ground running. And I think that's what a lot of the community is feeling, is we want this to move really, really fast. And then trying to visualize how this is going to be here through our next steps so that we can all feel better that it is going to be faster than what those 8 years were.
Yeah, no, it is. I remember when we started with Virginia Beach and we did a panel very similar to what we did last night, and how difficult it was for them to hear some of the timelines, because even starting 3 years in, they were impatient to get something built. So it's a very natural impulse. Thanks, Perry, very much. Terrence.
There were a couple of things that stood out to me. One being that there were 2 cities that referred to the tragedies by the dates of the tragedies, 5/31 and 1 October. That stood out to me. And then the other thing that stood out to me is I believe three of the sites mentioned that the memorials are not at the site of the tragedy. That also stood out to me.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Certainly the way things have been characterized to me, of course, the city has taken possession of the property, and I think at a future meeting we will visit that property as a committee and really understand it. But as you say, other communities have gone in a different direction. I don't see any raised hands for the moment. Myra, did you want to share? No.
Hi, yes, my takeaways was mainly the different times that took to each individual memorial to still don't have the memorial completed. So I took away the sentiment of the holiness, the respect of each individual memorial. I didn't know how far the memorial from Sandy Hook is located from the school, but I don't know. It was very sad to me looking at that memorial. I heard about the collection of the tokens of love. I heard about not all the families and survivors being involved. And so it's kind of similar, but at the same time, there's a difference in all of them. So it's very emotional.
Absolutely. I have to confess to you all, I'm a bit of a sucker for maps. And so when Myra just asked that question, I got very curious about the distance, and it's very close. It's about 4/10 of a mile from the elementary school to the memorial, but that's a really interesting point and something we have to think about. So thank you for that. Aracelis, would you like to share anything at this point? I see you on video. I didn't know if you wanted to speak. Don't know that she has anything to share at this moment. Maybe so. I'll leave her for the moment, but if you would like to say anything, please let us know. We're happy to hear your comments. What I thought I would do, we've been exposed to 4 memorials already, but what I want to do is ask that you take a moment and look at, in your packet on the slide deck, slides 33 through 38. And I'll put those up on the screen for the public to be able to see. These are memorials that vary in terms of their purpose. So most of these are not necessarily to a incident of mass violence, the way that San Bernardino and Las Vegas and Virginia Beach and Sandy Hook were. But I will tell you that certainly when we shared these with the Virginia Beach Committee, they resonated with different parts of them, and I think different parts of them may have made their way into the design. And I also note that when we had the open discussion, a lot of you referenced other visits you've made, and we may be able to share on screen some of the visuals of the memorials that have stood out to you. But what I'm going to do is just briefly kind of show a visual of each of these, and then ask if anybody wants to comment on anything that they're seeing that they think would be relevant to the future Pulse Memorial. So initially, we're looking at the memorial to the New York City Fire Department. It's related to the 9/11 first response. So you can see there a sort of an image of the firefighters caring for someone who is stricken there or hurt or dying. On the next page, it's very hard to capture it in one photo for those who have been there, but the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is this very wide, expansive structure that primarily is there to list all of the names of people who fought and died during that war, the several hundred thousands of them. Then there, of course, is the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, and there are more than one memorial. There's more than one memorial to Dr. King, but this is the one that opened in Washington, D.C. You can see it has a 30-foot carving of him, a feature called the Stone of Hope, and a feature called the Mountain of Despair. There's a reference to a line in the I Have a Dream speech, various other quotations. So just another design. I doubt anybody needs to be introduced to the Lincoln Memorial, but certainly a grand structure as well, with the former president there in the middle and all of the columns. This is kind of a off the beaten path memorial that I think someone shared this with me. But this is meant to be a set of stones in the Czech Republic to mark the site where 4 members of a Jewish family lived before they were murdered during the Holocaust in the 1940s. And one thing I should mention, they look large. They're extremely small. I mean, that is probably no bigger than, that's probably like 2 of these sticky pads together, each of those stones. So it looks large, like a large plaque, but it's actually quite small, but distinctive, maybe because of the gold or something like it. So just another point of reference. And then this is taken from a mass shooting, if I'm not mistaken, in Norway. And you can see that there is a band of steel with the names of the victims carved in the metal. And then it hangs from some pines in the area. And the location was done to allow people to withdraw and have some privacy. So of course, we could be here for 4 days, all day, looking at all of the memorials that exist and comparing. I just tried to pick a sampling, but I know that you all have visited others. And so whether it be any of the 6 or so that we just looked at, or the others last night, if you want to revisit some aspect of those, or another that you visited, I would just love to hear what is standing out to you about any of them, or something that recurs through all of them. Turn to Lolly.
Yes, with respect to Sandy Hook, I feel that, and I've heard this kind of before, I do like the idea of having the tree in the center. I feel that is kind of the symbol of hope, and it kind of rises above what we've endured. And so I think that if we could propose something along those lines, or kind of bring that element in as far as growth, and from this we will rise, kind of like the phoenix. And of course, and I agree with the elements of water, because I too, as someone who did sit, and I love that. I love the idea of having different elements, and it does bring the tranquility. And with respect to what happened in Norway, which was sad, I do like the idea of the privacy. As far as being in the woods, it had to do with the actual event, being at a camp for children. But I think, and this has been an idea brought up before, is kind of giving you a quiet room or a quiet space for reflection. I'm not saying another building, just like a little area. And I've seen that as with Senator Medina, and how they brought that element into the memorial itself.
Thanks, Lolly.
Thank
Terrence,
you.
I assume that was a new, or is that old? Okay. Tommy, then Norman, and then anybody else?
I also did like the sapling tree idea. Oh,
Move it closer to you.
sorry.
That's okay.
I'm usually loud, so that's why. I too like the tree idea, and something that I feel like a lot of concept arts misses when they design memorial. They don't know the spacing of like what Pulse is actually on that block. Like across the street's Dunkin' Donuts, next door is a window tint, and then behind Pulse what is like power lines. With the tree idea, like instead of one, I think it'd be a nice idea if we did like 49 trees, or as many trees we can. That does provide that sort of privacy for a memorial. So like while you're there paying your respects, you're not seeing like Dunkin' Donuts in the background, or you're not focusing too much on the car tinting next door. Or the for some people, like they don't want to see power lines in front. But
Right.
I do like the idea of a private area.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Norman.
For me, with the, I really like in Vietnam and as well as in Norway, and I think it was in Virginia Beach where they said they had the walls with the names, and I think the walls was kind of like a fountain where the water was like running over into the lake or something, and it had all the names on it. That's kept standing out to me because I feel it's very important to memorialize the names were lost that night. So that's one of the major things for me, the names and the water features, of course, as well as the privacy, the serenity.
Absolutely. You know, part of my job is not just to call on folks who speak, but to kind of check in on everybody who's here. So I want to just check in with folks who I haven't heard from either this round or haven't heard from as much, and just see what else you'd like to bring forward at this point in the conversation. Yes, ma'am.
So, I'm thinking of the memorial in New York for 9/11. When you walk up to what were the footprints of the building, although you're in a very congested, busy city, you feel removed, not just because of the nature elements, the trees and all the rest of that. It just seems to be kind of further into the block itself. So you're not hearing the noise from the street and so on and so forth, and thinking of where Pulse is located. It's noisy, it's kind of cluttered. So I kind of almost envision like a wall around it, but not consistent in size. Let's say it's kind of round, going from a very large high point and then coming down like a horseshoe shape, but angled. And within that, when you walk in there, you would feel, you wouldn't have to see or hear the traffic, and you would feel like you're in another space that's not so city. I think that's something that New York did very well in creating the space in front of the footprints for you to walk up and no longer feel like you were in that congested space.
Right. Certainly a particular issue that Tommy was talking about, the situation of this. I see Aracelis. Aracelis, we would love to hear your comments.
Realmente yo estoy de acuerdo con el del 9/11. Yo estuve ahí y no sé, me impactó mucho y veo que ese está claro que de una manera más pequeña, porque el 9/11 es algo bastante grande, pero claro que yo me gustaría que lo tomaran en consideración. ¿En cuánto?
Gracias, Aracelis. Thank you. That's really helpful to have that input. Others who I haven't gotten to hear from that wanted to add something. Yes, sir. Brian, did you want to go first, or?
Well, there's a monument in DC where there's you were talking about privacy, where there's excuse me, all the name of the states, I believe it is, and they're all like blocked in and faced in towards each other. So he was like some privacy, and everybody's talking about the names of everyone. So there's 49 angels, so we can put like, block it around, put the names in words, a little story, I guess, about the loved ones, artifacts like everybody else was talking about, preserve something. I also could see water dripping from it with, trees all around. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Brian, if you'll permit me, I just, there was a comment, now of course I've lost it on my phone, but there was a comment that came in since last night from somebody in the community. This is shared to us by someone named, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it, Rochelle Cannon. I think it's Rochelle. It's spelled like Michelle with an R. And she says, I was watching television. They did a story on the committee. One member or survivor stated he would like the victim's story told and all of them memorialized. I think adding a QR code to each victim where the family can tell their story, who they were, et cetera, what better way to know the victims by their voice or the family's voice telling their story. So just another Ricky Cannon, excuse me, is how she or he identified herself. Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and then I see a couple of cards. Great.
First and foremost, I love that you all mentioned the water features from Pulse. They were such an impactful part of the interior and exterior of the building. They were a nightmare to keep clean. You're welcome.
Thank you.
But it was a beautiful club inside. Some of the things that I took away from hearing from the other panels from the other cities is the importance of making sure there is that quiet space for reflection, a space for survivors, first responders, that it's and of course for the 49. I think those individual spaces individually mean a lot to those impacted in those areas. So yeah.
Thank you, Brian, very much. Let me, just before I go to the cards, Josh Garcia online had his hand up, then it went down, but I want to make sure that I don't miss you.
Sorry. Yeah, I wanted to mention, there is one tree on the Pulse property that is actually like an original tree, just so putting that out there as well. And then also wanted to echo what Nancy was saying about the wall. I mean, I think I don't know if anyone feels the same way, but when I go, sometimes, it being on that busy street does feel a little bit intimidating if you are trying to grieve or you're, with people talking, and it's just very open. So I think creating a wall of some sort, 9/11 museum and memorial does a really great job of the entire area outside of just the memorial, making sure that it's secure and it's safe for folks. So just something that I really loved about that memorial site as well.
Thanks very much, Josh. I appreciate that. And let me turn to Reverend Rivera. Celino.
I'm very quiet, trying to practice more active listening than anything else. Elements are very important. Everybody has been talking about some kind of element, the importance of element, especially water. The symbols are very important. What this committee is going to convey for the people. What is the sentiment that we're going to evoke when people visit this memorial? So they being referenced to angels a lot. I don't know if you notice that. And wind is another element, and I haven't seen wind in the other places. Wind can be also produce white noise, which take care of a lot of the noise around you. Such water as well, but think about those things. So. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jimmy had her card, but
I did. I put it bounce off of 9/11, and I don't know who's been there or not, but something, I lost a friend in 9/11, but something that is really beautiful there, not the water feature, but at the museum, which let's not dive into that. But in the museum, there is a kiosk. It's within a room, and there's a couple kiosks, and they have the photos of all of the victims up there. And you can just type whatever name you want, and it pulls up a story and you can hear it. Now, the thing that is beautiful about that is there is a room within the room that is, you can go in there, it's pretty dark, and the video pops up of the family member or friend, and they tell their story about that person. And it is beautiful. If you've never been, I would say look it up if you can. It's that always pops into my mind. It's easy. You can just type in a name really quick. And I love the feature of 9/11 of how accessible it is. You can pull anything up online, type in somebody's name and say, hey, where are they located within the water feature? And it takes you directly to that spot and lets you know where they are. It is very accessible and user friendly. Just a thought.
yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I'm hearing and thinking about is, the space of where the Pulse sits is both, as we've described it, surrounded by things that may or may not align with a memorial. That small piece of land can sort of launch someone to something that doesn't have to physically sit there. Seems interesting, given the limitations. Lolly is next.
Thank you. With respect to the technological component, I do agree. I think that is viable. It's something that could assist as far as continuing our stories in our community. One concern I do have with that is technology and its speed and security and the need for how will we capture that? Is that something we can partner with museum? And I know, but memorial, I'm just speaking with respect to as far as that component and the space. That's just something that I just wanted to kind of throw out there, given background in technology. It's in such, so
That's very important.
just something to think about.
There are details of thinking about a physical space that some of us take for granted, including security, including maintenance, including weathering, and other kinds of considerations. So that's all, I think, very relevant. Brett Reed.
So I think color and community. So I mean, including those colors, I know not everybody there was part of that community, but the majority was. So I think that color and light is definitely something that I would like to see in there. I agree with water. And I'd like to know if the city also acquired the lot behind it, because the previous place purchased that lot. So we've got to think about parking and things like that as well when we design this. So the logistics that come along with that kind of thing, we need to think about as well, because there's not a lot of street parking and that's in the middle of a neighborhood right there. And then I've seen a lot of other memorials, maybe the survivors tree. And that's how you incorporate those survivors, because making this more about the people that we lost, the people that were taken from us, but including a tree that's going to continue to go and continue to, like a survivor's tree.
That I think was the way they framed it in Virginia Beach, if I'm not mistaken. All good points. And just in reference to the question about the adjacent tract, I'll need to get some more information before I can state definitively the status of that. I've heard conversation, but I don't know what the status of that piece of land is.
Me and Kelly was kind of talking earlier about that. We like the color scheme too. There are like 49 angels, so that's pretty much like 7 rainbows. So everybody can get their own color.
Yeah. It's really nice. I'm going to put Kelly on the spot, because I think Kelly might be the only person that I haven't gotten to hear from. So I just want to see if there's anything that you want to share, and you can say no and don't ever call on me again.
Well, no, I'm interested because when we spoke on our call together, you had asked about building new or saving the building, or how. What do people feel about the building itself and some of the artifacts, like the sign, as you said? You know, and you were talking about cost as well, building new and using existing pieces of the.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested to hear, you know, what people think about those particular things.
Well, so am I, and I
don't know if I'm getting ahead of our.
I was going to say, Kelly is put Kelly's name down on the demerit. I'm teasing, obviously, but we of course are going to have to talk about the future of the building. We all know that. I'd like to hold it for at least another meeting, you know, maybe for August, just because I think what we're doing now is extremely useful in terms of thinking about what we think we want in the space, and then thinking about where the building may or may not fit, or what parts of the building may or may not fit. So I'm sure folks have opinions. I understand that. I also want the families and the community to be able to weigh in on that before you all definitively move in a particular direction. So point taken and noted.
And that's, something that I think about every day, in my profession. So, what pieces and parts of the site that we want to keep or not.
Sure. Yeah, what to keep. I see Marcelino.
Yes, also take into consideration the culture, to be culturally aware, culturally celebrating the cultures of the people. Also, that need to be accessible to all.
And do you think, just as a point of clarification, do you think about it as physical accessibility, linguistic, all of it?
Amen.
All of the above. Thank you. Thank you for that point. Tommy.
Also to add on top of that with the culture, like I said yesterday, and I'll say today and probably more, it was a majority LGBTQ community that was taken that night, but it was also a large amount of the Latin and Hispanic community. I think there should be a fusion of all those Latin cultures incorporated into the memorial in a way, because so many were either Latin, Hispanic, LGBTQ, or both, and maybe not either of those. But I think since it's a large factor of both communities that they need to be represented, and I do believe that there should be English and Spanish and maybe even some Portuguese translation available.
Very much appreciate that, and the reminder that we need to be mindful of Portuguese as well. That's important. Josh Garcia, go ahead on Zoom.
I just also want to add in there, like, I really want us to all think about the essence of Pulse and why people went to Pulse and how it brought us all together. It was a place of love. It was a home for a lot of young LGBTQI plus youth. It was a place where people could take, I brought my mother multiple times to the Pulse, right? It was a safe space. It was clean. It was happy. The interior was welcoming. The people were welcoming. And making sure that that's part of that story of love and, this hateful act, disgusting act happening there, but letting love lead and just remember, it was a place of love, a home of love.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I think that ties back to some of what Tommy and others have said around this notion of sanctuary that the Pulse represented to them and how to manifest that. Oh, Norman, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to touch bases on what Brett mentioned about like a survivor's tree. I feel like as a survivor, every year, when you're kind of like looking back on what happened and feeling all the emotions that you feel, it does seem to feel like we get brushed under the rug, as that saying goes, because when it comes to the media storm and the commercialization like of everything becomes about 49 and like remembering the 49, and it's like media's quick to interview us and talk to us, but we're remembering the 49. So it's like I feel like there needs to be a place like a tree or a place for us to reflect on and feel seen and heard as well. That's definitely an aspect I'd like to see in our memorial.
Understood. Thank you. Nancy.
Yeah, I'm hearing everything, and I'm hearing all the references to cultural competency and linguistic competency in this. When we're cutting to the chase, we're talking about the Latino community, and it was Latin night and so on and so forth. Within a lot of when you think of the Latino community, kind of sometimes people think of just Latino community, but we're a quilt, right? We're not just one big blanket. And the majority of those who passed away were Puerto Rican, to be specific. An acknowledgement of the different, like if you go to the Mexican consulate, for example, they talk about their loss. An acknowledgement of who from where. It would be kind of important.
I just want to tell you, I had never thought about the difference between a quilt and a blanket. until you use that metaphor. It's very interesting. But no, there is no group that can be looked at in a single monochromatic, monolithic way, and especially.
But if we can make sure that every 49 are getting represented culturally, that would be a plus, because there's always been feeling and emotion or something where the Blacks and other survivors have been feeling left out. So, let's do it for everyone, not just for the Puerto Rican community, because there was other people, other races that were affected as well.
Understood.
I think I pretty much said that.
Yeah. Lolly?
With respect, yes, I agree. As far as the cultural sensitivity and what you're saying with regards to as a quilt and with not just with the Latino community, but with with each community, each individual who are angels as well as the survivors. And I was kind of going to go back onto discussing with regards to survivors. It is important that, yes, we do have that recognition. And I know that's because you present what hope we have to continue just as our angels. And so, yes, I just wanted to let that be known that and the first responders, without them, without you, without each of us. So my hope is that we can do that, even with a tree or something that to keep dancing and smile.
Thanks, Lolly, very much. Yeah, I appreciate that. Let me just quickly check in with Myra and with Aracelis and ask, I know we heard from Josh on Zoom, but just check in and see if either of you wanted to add anything before I shift the conversation.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
But I'm very exciting about all the generating ideas that everybody has bringing to the table. I love everything that everybody has mentioned, the calming sounds, the quiet thoughts about representing each individual that the lives were taking or are angels. And I thought that we were discussing about what memorials you have presented and showed to us. And so we generated other ideas, which is wonderful. And I had to mention that some of the memorials that I have visited, like the Pentagon and the Oklahoma Memorial, there's something that stood up with me. And it was that in the Pentagon, there were benches for the 184 people that were killed there. And each bench was surrounded by water. The water reflects the lights. So that was very touching to me, as well as when I went to the Oklahoma Memorial. Also the chairs, 168 chairs, and there were 19 of them of children. And that's very, very impactful. And also the way that they honored the birthdays in the 9/11 Memorial, when they leave a rose in each individual name. Also the survivors wall, the survivors tree, that I believe a lot of these memorials have incorporated that. And so it's beautiful as well. There's kind of like a rescuer area and a children's area that they have as well in the Oklahoma Memorial. And and they have places to so you can express and leave your words of encouragement digitally, I believe, as well. Also, there's a fence where you can also leave your tokens, your earring, whatever your piece of jewelry you're wearing, and leave it behind, like they have done here at the Post Memorial site as well.
So lots of different elements here that you're remembering from different places.
Yes.
Let me just check in with Aracelis and see if you wanted to add anything here, and then I'm going to just shift the conversation a little bit. Aracelis, if you want to say anything, I just want to give you a chance.
Sí, sí, realmente yo considero que estamos sí que hablando de lo que queremos, pero no he oído todavía, no sé si me estoy adelantando, qué presupuesto contamos, quién está encargado de la finanza, porque de querer, como le dije, uno quiere lo más adecuado para nuestros hijos, porque que se haga algo hermoso para ellos, pero realmente lo principal es con que se cuenta para poder hacer ese memorial. Y de eso todavía no se ha hablado, no sé. Si estoy equivocado, y discúlpeme si ese es un tema para más adelante, pero esa es mi inquietud ahora mismo.
You're absolutely correct that we have not talked about budget at this point. I don't have any information that I can share about the budget at this time, but I know that that's something that has been talked about. And so at some point, I suspect we'll be able to share some additional information. My sense is that there would be public funding and some private funding, but I don't know anything more than that. So I will relay the information that I have as soon as I have it. But I think Aracelis is bringing up a very important point, that there can be aspirations and then there can be the realities of how much things can cost. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So here's what I want to ask everyone to do. This is going to require, oh, I'm sorry. Norman, I'm sorry. I was in a zone and I missed
Oh,
it.
you're fine, you're fine. It was actually about what you were talking about, the funds and everything, because it was one of the questions that I had for a few of the board that we talked to yesterday. It was how exactly, like, did they go about raising funds, and like who exactly raised them? I wanted to ask them like
Yeah,
how they handled, like how each separate
it's
was
very
handled, to
interesting.
see if we could maybe
Yeah.
that could be some input we could, put forward into the
I'm
future.
happy to follow up with each community just to get this definitively. But my understanding is Virginia Beach is paying for theirs entirely out of public funds, primarily because it took place at a municipal building and it affected municipal employees. Las Vegas, it sounds like, is in a fundraising phase right now, which was a little surprising to me. And it sounded like Sandy Hook had to get voter approval for some of the funding because it was public, but they may have also raised some, I don't know. And then I need to check. I don't know anything about San Bernardino's funding. Tommy?
Sorry. Also a quick note on the budget, again, compared to the like San Bernardino, all that. Unfortunately, we have a stain from the last foundation that is affecting this.
Right.
Because they got tons of money last time around, to this day that we still don't really know what happened to it. How are we going to even convince people to donate to us? Because you can't blame them if they question like, well, I donated last time and nothing happened. Why would I donate again this time?
Right.
And I kind of go back to my question from yesterday regarding the commissioners, if they were part of the last time around. Did they get any of that money from the last foundation? And if so, would they be willing to put that money, if they did get any, towards this memorial?
I have no information that any commissioner
I just want to put
did,
that out there.
But
and,
yeah, no, I appreciate the sentiment. That is something that I know has crossed some other people's minds. Here's what I'm going to do, folks. I know that we are going to be starting public comment here in about 15 minutes. That's very important to keep our promise to them. But what I want to do, if I can go back to the PowerPoint presentation for just a minute, and I'm going to also ask you to grab your sticky pad for this part of the exercise. I am of the mind that spending a lot of time writing a mission statement is probably not a great use of our time, but I also think that there's something beneficial to thinking about the purpose that we have in getting this memorial designed and built. So on the slides, this is starting at slide 49 in the packet, and I'll put it up on the screen. I've shared with you in the packet just a handful of mission statements. You heard actually one of them last night from Tennille Pereira in Las Vegas. And I may ask PJ if he can to just take me out of the picture there and put the slide larger so that it's a little easier to read. And of course, I've still made it too small for even, I feel like I'm at the optometrist. But there are mission statements that I tried to excerpt from, and I tell you what I can try to do is pull this up on my screen so that I can maybe read it. But the idea here is these are mission statements that have been used by other communities as they've built memorials. And frankly, given how long this community has waited for this memorial, I didn't feel it was appropriate to spend a lot of committee time writing a statement. Having said that, I'm actually going to ask you to think about what a statement might be right now individually. And what I would like you to use for inspiration are a couple of things. One is any of the materials, the mission statements that you see elsewhere. But I also want you to think about what you've heard over the last day and a half. You've heard about the desire for a space that feels tranquil, quiet, allowing for reflection. You've talked about the importance of every single victim feeling seen, both for who they were and the cultural identities that they had. You talked about the significance of survivors feeling seen and their identities being respected. You talked about there being ways for people to honor each of the victims in a special way that reflects who they were as people. You've talked about considering the site in ways that are particular to the site. So I'm not meaning to script a mission statement and all of that, but I'm trying to use what I've heard from you all to sort of help inform how you might think of what our purpose is for this memorial. And so what I would ask you to do for the next few minutes is put pen to paper and write a sentence. It could be 2 sentences, but write a sentence that you think distills what you have heard and what you believe to be our purpose here for this memorial. And then we will collect those and read them, but I probably will read them after public comment. I don't want to rush everybody. So take your time. You can have until just before 5:30, it's 5:21. Take some time to work on this. And then at 5:30, we will hear public comment. And then shortly after that, I want to read what you all have written. And then it'll be time probably for us to go to the community open house down below. Pardon?
You want them to stick here?
Yeah, and if you would just stick them up where it says posted here on this chart and easel. Just as a reminder to Myra, to Aracelis, and to Joshua, we do want to include your contributions. So if you will send it as an email to Donna Weish, you can also send it as an email to me. But we want to make sure that your statements are included in our collection.
See if they have some tape.
You know, if anyone from the 3M Corporation is listening, we have a real problem with stickies that aren't sticking. I think for now, let's hand them to Donna, just to make sure they don't blow away. Oh. So just in case you're just joining us, we are completing a writing exercise of thinking about our mission, our purpose, based on the conversation that we've had so far. And in about 3 minutes, we're going to hear from those wishing to make public comment. Each person will have 3 minutes. And then as soon as we finish that, I'm just going to read the initial thoughts made by our committee members of a mission statement or a statement of purpose, and then we will head down to the open house. Again, our next committee meeting will be on Wednesday, August 21st at 4 p.m. at the Kia Center, unless otherwise indicated.
Got everybody?
Now we've got a couple of people still writing here.
There's papers and pencils all over the place. You just put the paper against it. And then you make an etching of the person's name, the officer's name. It's really pretty neat. Because the paper has, of course, the logo for the memorial and all the rest. You did? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. The could have been fault under the item from that one. Or bad habits, right?
So just so the public knows, we've got a couple of committee members finishing their thoughts, and then here in just a moment, we'll start with public comment. Also, all of the sticky notes that we're using as part of this meeting are considered public record. So folks who will be interested in knowing what all these ideas are don't have to worry about running up and taking a photo or a screenshot. We will certainly publish these in due course. Terrence, did you give us yours? And I know we've got our 3 members on Zoom. Just want to make sure that when you're comfortable, you email those to Donna. You can also email them to me, and we hope to incorporate you as well. I'm going to turn to Ariana and to Stephanie for our public comment for 3 minutes per speaker.
So for public comment, we have our first speaker is Yoli Sintron. Yoli, if you can please unmute your device. You have about 3 minutes to speak.
Yoli, I don't know if you can hear us. I see a Zoom user that is muted. Sorry. Ariana, let's go with the next speaker and see if we can circle back.
Okay. Our next speaker is going to be Zachary Blair. Zachary Blair, if you can please unmute your device. You have roughly 3 minutes to speak.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
All right, sure. So this whole process is unacceptable. I mean, this is not the fault of the committee members who are all wonderful people, and I have so much love and respect for most of you, all of you that I know. This is the fault of the city and Mayor Buddy Dyer. They should not have put you in this position. They didn't do this with care and consideration that they should have done. But you don't have to continue to be a part of this process that inflicts harm on the other families who have been excluded. You've heard the pain in Christine's voice yesterday. How can the city do this to Christine? Not only Christine, but Olga, Miriam, Carmen, and the other mothers and families. To be unified, you have to take a stand and show that you are in this together. Stand with Christine. Don't keep going forward without her as if this problem which the city created has been resolved. To continue without them is an injustice. A process that inflicts this kind of harm should be completely abandoned. And if you do not have the power to make decisions about the process and the composition of the committee, then you're just being used by the city as a performance piece. The mayor does not even have to move forward with your proposal that you're doing, that he can decide. You might just be wasting your time. And don't let the city lead you down the wrong path, just as the One Pulse Foundation did. This process is insulting. It's being led by incompetent people who are copying and pasting questions and processes that ignore where we are at as a community that has already gone through memorial committees, focus groups, advisory panels, and an international design competition. I mean, Myra should have an honorary PhD in memorial making because she's dedicated years of her life to this. She's seen every memorial in this nation almost. This process isn't being led with the care and respect you and all the families and survivors deserve. Politicians, bar owners, nonprofit leaders have all tried to divide us, and they've been successful. But with the dissolution of the One Pulse Foundation, the city's lies having been exposed, we've learned that we are stronger together. Let's not allow this to happen again. Take a stand now. Resign from the committee and stand with Christine and the other mothers. If you want unity, you have to be unified. And let me tell you something, for those of us who were at the unveiling of the tribute in Osceola County, that was the first time in Central Florida that we saw people lead with compassion and care and create a dignified memorial. They want to call it a tribute, but it's just a matter of words. For the first time, we saw that something that wasn't exploitative. We were all in a room together and we knew this is what we should do. This is the right direction. This is not the same feeling that we have now, and you all know it. My point is that you don't have to engage in a divisive process that does harm. You heard the pain in Christine's voice yesterday. You have the power to force the city to do the right thing. Use your power. You know what you want. We as a community know what we want, and we will never get there unless we get there together. Resign and let's create a grassroots community where all the families lead and that brings everyone whose application was rejected in. Let's move forward together. The city and the mayor should be helping you, not controlling you.
Thanks, Dr. Blair. Next speaker.
Next speaker we have up is Joshua Hernandez. Joshua, please, if you can for us, unmute your device. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Joshua, I see you online, but you are muted. Go ahead.
Hola, buenas tardes, ¿me pueden escuchar?
Go ahead.
And we can't hear you, Joshua.
Ok. Yo soy un sobreviviente y ya yo quiero que se haga este memorial porque seguir repitiendo lo mismo por 8 años ya me cansa emocionalmente y físicamente. Ya es tiempo que hagan un memorial y que se acabe todo esto porque ya yo quiero seguir con mi vida. Yo no quiero seguir cada vez repitiendo lo mismo, porque ya yo estoy cansado. 8 años y no han puesto ni un bloque tan siquiera, solamente lo que han hecho es lucrarse de nuestra tragedia y llenarse los bolsillos, tristemente. Y se me rompe el corazón que 8 madres han sido rechazadas para estar en el comité. Las madres son importantes y son las que tienen que tomar la decisión, más nadie. Y yo necesito que la ciudad de Orlando se encargue y incluya esas 8 madres en ese comité. Por favor, ya es tiempo que tomen acciones y que no se queden callados. Que cada vez que nosotros preguntemos algo, nos contesten. Y ya, solamente necesitamos respuestas que han estado sin contestar durante 8 años. Y ya yo quiero tener mi paz y mi tranquilidad. Y ya yo no quiero seguir hablando de Pulse Nightclub, porque de verdad que me frustra cada vez que sale algo nuevo. Es todo y muchas gracias.
Gracias, Joshua. Thank you. Next speaker.
Next up, we have Brenda Campo Marquez. Brenda, if you can for us, unmute your mic. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Buenas tardes a todos. Para crear una confianza, cultivar relaciones y entender las perspectivas de otro, primero tienen que checar que sus sonidos trabajen, porque durante esta reunión he visto cómo ha sido sabotajeado el sonido de muchos de los miembros del comité, porque el sonido se va bien bajito, haciendo imposible que podamos escucharles. Yo tengo entendido que los memoriales se hacen para las personas que han muerto. ¿Cómo ustedes pueden memorializar a los sobrevivientes? Es asistiéndoles a ellos en este día, en este presente, con sus necesidades económicas, físicas y emocionales, sin tener que seguir pasándole la papa, como dicen en Puerto Rico, de agencia en agencia, sin tener que seguir siendo revictimizados. Creo que todos han aportado ideas muy hermosas. Me interesa mucho la cultural. Y en cuanto a los primeros, los first responders, me parece a mí que ellos no tienen nada que ver aquí para ser memorializados, porque ellos fallaron en responder primeramente como se supone. Así que no creo que deban de estar puestos en el mismo lugar. Si ya usted tiene información sobre el presupuesto, porque se ha hablado, porque hasta este día, cuando ya esto ha sido previsto, usted no tiene información sobre el presupuesto pendiente, y todos sabemos que mucha gente se va a negar a donar por el abuso y el fraude que cometieron desde Bárbara Poma hasta la misma ciudad de Orlando. Y todos los que están sentados ahí como empleados de Pulso deben de con dignidad levantarse y dejarle esas sillas a otros familiares de personas que murieron y de las madres. No creo que eso crea un conflicto porque ustedes sirvieron para Pulso y sabemos lo que Pulso nos ha hecho. Así que vuelvo y les digo, yo espero que todos puedan dormir, ¿verdad? La ciudad de Orlando, porque lo que han hecho es una atrocidad. Y eso tiene que parar.
Thank you. Brenda.
Up next, we have Damaris Benitez. Damaris, if you can please unmute your device, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Buenas tardes, ¿me escuchan?
Yes. Sí.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Damaris Benítez Torres. Soy hermana de una víctima, Martín Benítez Torres. Actualmente vivo en Puerto Rico y estoy aquí en representación de mi mamá, mi hermana, ya que nosotras aplicamos para pertenecer y ser parte de esto, y pues fuimos rechazadas. Quiero, no obstante, agradecer la oportunidad de poder expresarme, ya que con tantos intentos, pues, no he tenido la oportunidad. Agradezco también a los miembros del panel, ¿verdad?, por estar ahí. Puedo conocer que hay madres, hay sobrevivientes en el panel. Entiendo que muchas de esas sillas pueden ser ocupadas porque tienen el derecho, estas madres. Me siento en parte decepcionada, pues porque entiendo que nosotros somos un papel importante en esto para tomar decisiones, ya que estamos y queremos y deseamos que honren, ya que hemos esperado por 8 años un memorial digno para estas personas que allí les apagaron su luz, incluyendo a mi hermano. Los sobrevivientes, porque tengo entendido que un memorial es para personas que ya han fallecido. En voz de los sobrevivientes, ellos merecen también ayuda tanto emocional, su bienestar, económica. Nosotros aquí en Puerto Rico, y tengo mi derecho de libertad de expresión en dar mi sentir, nos sentimos olvidados, discriminados, ya que ahora mismo en el comité actual que está presente, no hay nadie de Puerto Rico. Y eso nos hiere. Me siento frustrada ver a una madre, mi madre, sufrir como sé que las demás madres han sufrido por este proceso. Pues porque lo que queremos es que un memorial digno para ellos. Estuve de acuerdo con muchas ideas que compartieron, pero nos encantaría que nos hicieran parte de esto, pues porque entiendo que nos lo merecemos. Tenemos unas personas que siempre han estado con nosotros apoyándonos y eso es lo que necesitamos, apoyo de la ciudad. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Damaris Benitez. I hope I said her name correctly.
And we're going to circle back around to Yoli Sintron. Yoli, if you can, please unmute your device. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Yo soy Yoli Cintrón. Soy de las personas que al principio estuvo con estas madres y algunos de los sobrevivientes, incluyendo los que están sentados en esa mesa. Ellos saben exactamente quién yo soy. Añadiendo un poquito a lo que dijo Damaris y explicando un poco, es que las madres de Puerto Rico, no las que están viviendo en Puerto Rico, nunca han sido escuchadas. Además, siempre han tenido ciegas, porque las noticias que dan aquí no las dan en Puerto Rico. Solamente ahora es que se han tratado de comunicar por email, y para eso pues tienen que saber algo culturalmente, que en Puerto Rico, en ciertos sitios como en la isla, en partes un poquito más remotas, que casi la mayoría de estas madres viven, se va la luz, no tienen internet, o algunas madres son de alta edad que no pueden, no saben cómo conectarse en un Zoom. Por eso era tan importante que incluyeran y hubiera un balance entre tanto madres, familiares, los sobrevivientes y personas de la comunidad. Yo me hago voz de que yo he tratado por medio, con permiso de las madres, porque yo no hago nada sin el permiso de ellas, que hemos tratado tanto con la ciudad como con usted, Mr. Schooler, de comunicarnos desde antes. Y usted no se ha tratado de comunicar con nosotros en ningún momento. La ciudad, mucho menos. Por eso estamos con esta controversia que estamos ahora. Yo lo único que le pido es que cada uno de ustedes que está ahí sentado se acuerde que aquí murieron 49. Que un memorial es para los muertos, no para los vivos. Eso es todo. Que pasen buenas noches.
Gracias, Yoli. If I'm not mistaken, Yoli, did we meet when I did some focus groups at the beginning of this process? Yoli attended with some of the other mothers. Nancy was there as well. So I'm glad to hear from you again. And Ariana?
We have no more speakers. There is a written public comment by Sarah Leonard that will be submitted for the record.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, we are close to time, and so I want to read your work, if that's okay. The stickies are sticking. Is that what you're suggesting? Tape. All right. Let me read first something I got from Myra Alvear. Oh, you wrote it. Never mind. Okay. All right, here we go. To recognize a place that was a sanctuary to many. That sanctuary, the love and fun times it represented, needs a place that can bring that feeling and at the same time respectfully remember those who suffered and perished that day. Largest LGBTQIA+ mass shooting at the time, affected members from all backgrounds and sexual orientation. To honor the 49, support the survivors, recognize our first responders, and give a message of hope, acceptance, and love to all who visit this place today and in the future. To provide direction, guidance, and advice for the, I'm assuming creation, I'm so sorry if I'm misreading that, of a Pulse Memorial in the city of Orlando. To provide a culturally and linguistically sensitive place to all, I think, victims, but I'm not sure, and to remind them that love always wins. honor and celebrate the lives that were brutally taken on June 12th, 2016. The Pulse Memorial exists to honor the spirit of the victims, survivors who filled the nightclub with the value they and this community demonstrated in the wake of the tragedy. To create a place of hope, reflection, contemplation, legacy of love, unity, to honor our Pulse tragedy, to capture the spirit of our community. To ensure that the passage of time serves to memorialize those we lost and teaches us to move forward regardless of adversity. We may honor, reflect, recognize this tragic event and its impact on our community and the world. We rise from this and grow and learn. The mission of the Pulse Memorial Committee is to create a memorial that honors the lives taken and the survivors of the incident as a lasting testament to the values of love, inclusivity, and resilience. We strive to develop a space that educates visitors about the events of June 12th, provides a peaceful environment for reflection, and celebrates the spirit of Pulse as a place of acceptance and diversity. By involving diverse voices in the design process, we strive to ensure the memorial resonates with all those affected and serves as a beacon of hope for future generations. Our purpose is to provide a sanctuary to acknowledge all victims, survivors, and first responders in an oasis of healing and tranquility, and to provide knowledge and acceptance for all. Coming together to give a voice to those affected and to carry on the legacy of our 49 angels, to ensure who we are as a community is seen and memorialized. I can only imagine if I gave you more than 10 minutes to think about it, but that was remarkable work. And I would just ask anyone who cares to reflect on anything that they heard there that stays with them. Yes, sir.
I had mine up, but it was about earlier. I was going to ask a question about something someone said, just because I keep saying that that's like a constant. But about this, I saw that we all kind of wrote a very similar mission statement. You know, we want to memorialize respectfully, carry on, you know, the legacies, have some place for survivors, etc., which is one of the things I wrote down with the public, you know, and I honestly just wanted to ask, like, if you knew, or because, you know, the mothers being added, the 8 mothers that weren't included, it keeps being brought back up, you know, over and over and over again. And obviously this is going to be a continuation all throughout these meetings if it's not solidified as to how is there a way that it could happen. And if there's not a way, is there more sensitive and more detailed explanation for these mothers and these family members that weren't included, so that they feel like they are being included in this situation, but they weren't on the committee, but they feel like they just kind of were left out in the open. They didn't get like a one-on-one, maybe a more like intimate explanation as to, okay, this is why you weren't chosen, this is why, etc. You know, I know that there's a blank statement as to it was anonymous, you know, names were redacted, etc. But I feel like if that was put across to them, it may soften the blow a little bit, and it may help this process go along. Because, you know, I don't want it to be now, as a survivor, I feel like the fire and the heat gets turned up, because now there's people being like, oh, well, you shouldn't be on the committee, like drop out, etc. You know, things like that. It makes me feel like it kind of defeats the purpose if we're all just constantly battling each other and trying to figure out who's more meaningful here. Because I did notice that the survivors kept being brought up, because I know there was a few of us that said there should be a survivor dedicated area, but everyone that called in made sure to mention a memorial is for the people who passed away,
Right,
not
right.
which in turn they're correct, but we were also part of the event that's being memorialized.
So I need to be very careful here just because of time. I do have to respect the fact that we scheduled the public event at 6, so it doesn't in any way reflect how
No,
much,
definitely,
how
definitely.
important what you just said is, and I see Tommy and Lolly, so I will try to get to you. I just want to, for Norman's benefit and for those listening, say that I am very much hearing the frustration and the despair, and I believe that even with the committee moving forward as it's currently being constituted, I have a responsibility to find a way to make sure that these families feel heard. And I have in my mind some ways to do that, but I want to make sure that I sit with this a little longer and also get some of your input before I say, this is what we're going to do, because I think it's such an important thing. So I appreciate you bringing it back up. Tommy and Lolly, and again, I'm sorry to be doing this. I'm sorry, actually, before Tommy and Lolly speak. We have someone here named Helen Bostock. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Helen, did you want to speak to us? Okay. You'll have 3 minutes to do so.
Good afternoon. My name is Helen Bostock. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm from Orlando. I am a member of the LGBTQ plus community. I never visited Pulse building per se. I did know one of the victims. My partner and wife actually worked with one of the victims, Drew. Didn't know it at the time until she was told that she had worked with him. We went to the memorial service for him. I worked at the Dr. Phillips Center and was part of the events after the tragic event. It is a tragedy that after 8 years, we still have nothing to look and to remember except for the building. I also would think that to do anything to the building would also be a tragedy. That building represents those people who died. It also brings memories, good or bad, to the people of Orlando, to the city, and to the state. And I really think that that building should stay. Another memorial, maybe next to it, should reflect. And I really hope that this committee looks for not the quantity, but the quality of the memorial. Thank you.
Ms. Bostock, thank you very much. I'm sorry you had to wait for a while to speak to us. So briefly, Tommy, and if Lolly wanted to share.
So Norman kind of mentioned regarding the moms, like not being involved. I have said before, I'm like, if they are a family member of anyone who's passed, they should be here. I don't know the rules that the city of Orlando set for you other than like the 18 members. But I also can understand their frustration and the feeling of not being heard, because that's what happened with One Pulse Foundation. One Pulse Foundation, like, it was all about the 49, we will not let hate win and all of that. But they were not talking to survivors. They were not talking to victims' families, maybe in the first year or two, but that was it. And another thing that I'm feeling from those upset with this committee, and I understand, it's upsetting that not only did that foundation do that, we do have some committee members that was with that foundation, and at least one to this day I know has supported Barbara. And when there's that sort of discourse or a facade, it makes it difficult for anyone to take this seriously. And also for those I do understand this on this end too. Like, we are here mainly for the memorial commit, like, it's not, we're not part of any sort of investigation or anything. I do believe that they are owed that investigation that they want. We don't have the power to do that, unfortunately. We're just here for memorial. And for those saying they want the moms here, I want them here too. But I also, like Norman said, I don't feel that survivors should have less of a say because they happen to live through it versus pass. Memorials are not just for the dead, they're for an event. When you're just making a memorial for the dead, you're excluding everyone who was involved in the event. And unfortunately, this was an event. It wasn't just someone's passing. Lives were stolen. Some lives survived. They deserve recognition. I'm very 50-50 regarding first responders. I'm not going to get into that. But I don't like, because I mentioned it yesterday, I am not discounting mothers' level of what they deserve to be on memorial for. They do have their hurt, they have their pain. And when I said yesterday, if you weren't there, it's not the same. And that does not discount or diminish theirs. It is just a different pain. The mom should be here, survivors should be here, families should be here. And I hope that those detractors see that you do have people on this committee, that we're not just blindly following City of Orlando. I still have my reservations. I mentioned it once yesterday, once today, the commissioners that were part of the One Pulse Foundation, if they're involved this time around. I am very anti One Pulse Foundation. I don't want this to happen with this committee. And I'm hoping that the detractors, I'm not the only one. I know there's others here, but I want the detractors to know if we're not here to keep them in check, no one's going to keep them in check. And then it will be One Pulse Foundation again. And we don't want that.
I second that.
Correct. Yeah, thank you all for that. Lolly, I have to ask you to be extremely brief only because of the time. No.
I will be. And that it's basically what you just said. And that is that we're all here for, we cannot discount the fact that it is a memorial. Yes, a memorial is an event. There is history behind this. To look at this without that's what an event is. All of us were involved in one way or another. So to discount those that survived, they give us hope. They give me hope that we can move on, we can keep going. And as a family member of one of the victims, I mean, I think that I share the sentiments of all of the mothers, incluyendo las madres que están en Puerto Rico y todos los que están en todas partes del mundo que no están presentes. Quiero que todos entiendan que nosotros estamos aquí para ustedes. Quizás no estoy en Puerto Rico hoy, estuve antier, pero yo entiendo el dolor que ustedes tienen. I understand the pain that we all have. And I just want that's it. I will keep it very short, but yes, it's an event memorial. Thank you.
This is so complex. And I say that not as a complaint, more as just an observation. I see Araceli, so let me have you share with us and just again, we must conclude this meeting very soon because there is a community event. So I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I just wanted you to be aware of our time.
Sí, muy bien. Sí, no voy a durar mucho. Yo lo que considero que este tema sobre la elección del comité, tenemos que buscar la manera de una solución, porque va a ser un conflicto que va a estar en todas las reuniones. Entonces, yo soy de una que aunque esté en el comité, desde el primer momento he dicho que no me siento conforme, porque yo creo que se debió hacer una elección. Son 18, por lo menos 9 o 10 de las madres que estaban participando ahí, que se eligieran, porque yo no estoy en desacuerdo de lo que están, para que no crean que yo estoy en desacuerdo de lo que están en el comité, sino que porque ustedes no tienen la culpa de que lo hayan elegido, sino es que hubo una mala elección, porque los padres que estamos, participamos, todo tienen más, ¿cómo te digo? Más peso para poder elegir qué es lo que se quiere hacer en un memorial. Entonces, ahí es donde está la contradicción, que yo creo que debemos buscarle como una solución a este conflicto, por favor, para ver si ya podemos avanzar, porque cada vez que nos reunimos y estamos en lo mismo, eso es un dolor, y cada madre realmente tiene su razón. Entonces, yo creo que le debemos buscarle como una solución a esto para que podamos avanzar. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Araceli, for that thought, and I'm certainly absorbing this feedback. More importantly, I really want you all to hear me when I say thank you. Because you worked hard over these 2 days, emotionally and otherwise. It took some of you a huge amount of effort to be here, even virtually. I know we've had some illness amongst the group, and everybody has persevered, and that's extremely meaningful. So right now, we will continue with an open house conversation on the founders level of this building. And again, if you're unable to join us in person, you can visit pulseorlando.org/committee, and there'll be a way for you to contribute your comments in English or Spanish in much the same way that you're doing here tonight. And this committee will plan to reconvene on Wednesday, August 21st at 4 p.m. And I thank everyone for being part of this meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.